Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this session of the Data Doctor. This is going to be the last session for this calendar year. And during the next calendar year, I hope to be presenting to you some of the really neat things we saw just last week at the conference. And I hope everybody had a chance to attend the conference and saw things that you really liked, because there was some really great new stuff being presented. Today, I want to go back and revisit top end. And specifically, what I'd like to do is we get very frequent questions about calculating the top end and then taking all the other who are not in the top end and putting them in a group and showing a total for the top end and other. To do that, we're going to take a look at different ways of calculating the top end. And then finally, at last, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how we can drill down on a hierarchy and still see the independent top end at various levels in that hierarchy. Let's start with the data set. This is just a very simple data set that we're going to use today. It comes from the Superstore data that you got when you loaded Tableau. We're just going to look at segments and we're going to look at subcategories. Now, the easiest way to calculate the top end is with the top end filter, and we looked at this a couple of months ago when we looked at using the top tab on the filter. And we can hard code this as the top 4 and get a total that looks like this. And it's important to note that when you're using this filter, what you're getting is the top end based on the total value, not on the individual segments. We can take another look and we can break out the segments, and we can drive this with a parameter. And all I've done here is I've added a parameter so that I can specify how many values we want in the top, and I've got it set at 3 now, and I've used a parameter here and just added a parameter to the screen. But this is still based on the overall total, and it's not based on the individual segments. Now, we can take that one step further, and I added region to the screen, and we're still looking at the top end, the top 3 by the grand total, and we're looking at each segment, and you can see each region and the subcategories in each region are the same within each region, but we're not getting a deep dive where we can look at individually the subcategories within the region and within the segment. Now, to do that, we have to get down and use a ranking function or an indexing function, which are table calculations. The top end filters that we've been looking at are calculated in step 4 of the order of operations. And at that point, the total, the data table that underlies the worksheet has not totally been completed. And we have to get down into the table calculations, which are last in the order of operations. They're down here in step 10, before we're able to drill down into those subcategories. Now, there's a couple of different ways to do that. I personally like to use a ranking function. Other people like to use an index, and I'll show you each of those, and then I'll show you where we're going in terms of calculating the top end and other. And this is just a simple ranking function. I'm going to show you what the formula looks like here. All we're doing here is using a rank, and rank comes in several different forms. Okay. You can rank unique, or you can rank dense like they do in sporting events and the like. I like to use rank unique, and all it is a rank on the sales and it's descending order. Okay, and then I used a filter here. This is just a true false filter that says that if the rank we calculated is less than the parameter that we were using before, then we want to see it. And you can see we've broken this out now so that I can look at each segment independently. So for consumers, we're seeing shares, phones, and binders, but over here in corporate, now we're able to take a look at shares, photos, phones, and storage. And to do that, I just want to show you how we set up this calculation. And we're looking at the subcategory level, and we're restarting every segment. And by restarting every segment, we're able to look at the segments individually, which we were not able to do when we just looked at the top end. Okay. We can break this down one step further, adding region just like we did previously, and we can see now that we can look at each region independently. You can see here that East has machines and South has machines, but West only has phones, chairs, and tables. Okay, and we look at that again. And we set this calculation up to do pane down, which means that we're looking at each region by itself. Now, I mentioned before we can use index and accomplish the same sort of results, but there's a difference between rank and index. Index is based on the position that the record is within the table, where rank actually looks at the value within that record. So to get the top n here and the top three, we need to first sort the subcategories by sales. And I'm going to show you what these formulas look like also. This is just a simple index filter. And all this does is it takes a look at the index, which is right here. And once again, we're going to look to see that it's less than the value of 3. And so that you can see what we're doing here, we're going table down. So we're looking at the entire table, or we're looking at the rank by total. Okay, we can partition this again, and I can drop region in, and we're looking once again at the rank within each region independently, but we're not looking across segments. This is all based on total. And that's one of the reasons I prefer to use the ranking function as opposed to the index function. What I'd like to be able to do, and I know this chart's a little busy here, but what we'd like to be able to do is to look at each segment and each subcategory independently, and like to be able to look at a chart that gave us the top 3 within each segment, in each year, and by subcategory. And as you can see here, each segment is independent and each year is independent, so we're getting the top 3 in each combination of those. Now, I know that looks busy, but where we would like to see is something like this, where we could look and say, oh, I can see dynamically how things have changed, where all the values in orange are in my top 3 for the combination of the subcategory, the segment, and the year. And to do that, we start with an LOD expression. And I'm going to show you what that LOD is. And we've covered LODs a few times now, but what this says very simply is take all the combinations of the subcategory, the segment, and the year of the order date, and sum the total and save those totals. And then we're going to rank on those. And we just use that same ranking calculation, rank unique, based on the LOD. So at each level, rank them descending. And then as we look at that, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the subcategory level and we're going to restart each segment. So we're looking at each segment independently. And that gets us something that looks like this. Well, that kind of gets us close to where we wanted to be. Where we're headed and what we'd like to be able to do is do the top end and other. I just want to spend one moment and show you the difference between using the simple index to find the top n and the LOD expression. And all I've done here is use those same formulas that we've been looking at, and I put them all on the same chart. So that we can look at the subcategory, we can look by category, by subcategory, by segment. And you can see the index is simply based on the position within the chart. And I've restarted this with each category. So 1 to 4 are the records from the first, are the order from the first record to the last record. It doesn't take into account the actual value of the record. Where we're using the LOD expression, the rank is based on the actual value of that record. So the first value happens to be chairs here, which alphabetically is the second value in this chart. So if we were to look here at the rank based on the simple filter, and I'm just going to click off this filter here, I'm going to see the values in the order that they're presented in the chart. Okay, and this happens to be alphabetical order. And that's not really what we wanted to see, but we wanted to see rank based on the value. And you can see here the value here of the base, the rank based on the value uh, here is the actual second record in the chart. And as you can look down here, the second value is actually the 8th value in the simple index. Okay. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to calculate the total of the individual top n, and then I want to group everything else together into a single group that we're going to call other, and get the total of that. Now this gets to be a fairly complicated nested table calculation, so bear with me a second. I'm going to open this up and show you what we're actually doing, and then I'll explain how we did it. Okay. This is what the total table looks like. And what we want to do is we want to take a look at each subcategory. And if it's in the top 3, we want to label it by that subcategory label. And everything else that's not in the top 3, we want to label other. And what we're going to do is we're going to calculate a running total for all of these values based on their sales. So we get the running total of the top 3 to be this value here. And then we're going to subtract that value from the total to get that value right there. And then when we hide all the records that we don't want to see, we now have the total for the top and another. And I'm going to show you this once again. What we want to do is we want to see values 1, 2, 3, and 4, which is the first value of other. Now, the first thing you're going to note to do this, I do have to sort the table based on sales by subcategory. So I've done that. I put the sales by subcategory in here. And I want to show you what these other calculations look like. First, we're going to use a simple ranking again. This is the same formula we've seen before. We're going to rank by sales in a descending order. And then we need to calculate the running total based on that rank, which is what we're doing here. This is the running total of those sales values now that they're ranked in order. So I get from top to bottom, they're accumulating as we go down each record. And then I want to put a label because we want to call this, we want to see this label where we've got the subcategory for each of our top 3 here, and everything else we're going to call other. And now here's a calculation that actually does the total. What this says is if that value and that value are not the same, then use sales. If they are different, then use the total minus the running total. So what we're doing is for this first value here, we're taking the running total of these minus, we're taking the total minus the running total of that to get this value here. And now all we're going to do is we're going to use a show hide filter. And I'll show you what that looks like here. And we're just using that down to hide the values that we don't want to see. And that's based on the ranking function. And we're going to hide the values we don't want to see. We can come back in and then we can hide these total calculations so that we just see this total that gives us the total of each subcategory and then the combined total of everything else, which was our goal, which was our objective in the first place. I know that's a little complicated. It's going to get just a slight bit more complicated here because now what I'd like to do, I'd like to be able to look at each subcategory, in this case, each subcategory by region. And I'd like to look in a way that the subcategories within each region are independent. And you can see here that when I look at the top 3 in central, it's chairs, phones, and binders, and then everything else gets grouped into other. And if I look in the south, it's phones, machines, and chairs, and everything else gets grouped into other. So I'd like to look at those independently. And we're going to use the same sort of technique, but it's a little bit more involved because I also want to be able to drill down in this hierarchy. What I'd like to be able to do, and I'm just going to show you this and then we're going to bounce back. I just want to keep only this value because it's going to get a little busy here. I'd like to be able to look down and drill into region, drill down into region and look at state so that each state is independent. And I'm looking at the top 3 in Illinois that are not the top 3 in Indiana. They're different. And so that other will be different in Indiana, for example. And I'd like to be able to drill down even further than that. And we can. I'm not going to do it because it gets a little busy to see. But let's take a look at the calculations and how we pull that off there, how these calculations work, because they're a little bit different than what we looked at before. We're going to start with the same sort of calculation for the this is similar to the calculation that we were using for the LOD to calculate the sales at the region and category level, except now we're going to use an include function. And what the include function allows us to do is the drill down that we just looked at. What we want to be able to do is we want to be able to look at the region level and drill down to the state level and then drill down from that. Include essentially puts a stop and says, look, if we're below the region level, execute at that lower level. So if we're below the region level and we're looking at state, execute this LOD expression at the state level. When we get to the region level, stop at that point and always use the region after that point. And then the rest of these calculations are essentially the same. This is that same type of calculation that says, you know, if it's in this, if the rank is true, if it's in the top end, then use the LOD expression to total. If not, you use the other total, and the other total is simply this. It's just the window sum of all the other values. So if I unhide what we're looking at here, you can see that in our expression, the top 3 values are at the subcategory level, and the remaining values are all at this other value. It's all lumped together. And all we're going to do is we're going to come back and we're going to look at the top n records plus 1 more. And that's what this expression does. It says, I want to look at if the rank is less than my parameter plus 1, I want to see those values. So I want to see 1, 2, 3, 4 values. And then the rest of the values I don't want to see. So our chart ends up looking like this. And we can change this down to a different level. And now we're only looking at the top 2 values, for example. Okay. I want to go back in and I'm just going to show you this one more time that we can take a look at region. We can get down to state and we can continue to drill down. Well, this is a very dynamic solution. This is a question that comes up quite often on the forum on calculating the top end and other. And I wanted to share, oh, I'm sorry, Sagar, I pushed the wrong button. Okay. I wanted to share that with you today and make sure that you understood how to do it. I know the calculation is pretty complex. It's a pretty deep nested calculation, but that's the way that it's currently done. Maybe at some point in the future we'll have a little leeway on this, but right now that's how you would calculate the top end and other. Thank you for your time this morning. If you have any questions or any comments, I'd love to hear from you. You can reach out to my blog or to my, you can reach out to me at my blog, or you can reach me at Market Analytic 5 on Twitter. And this is my Tableau public profile.